This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for Avoid the maze of life that we get caught up in. We think it when we're little children, oh, I can't wait to grow up. I'm going to know and do everything that I've ever wanted to do. And for some of us, maybe that comes true, but for others, we struggle to get to that point. My guest today is Natalie Feynman, and I met Natalie through podmatch.com, one of my favorite places to find guests because the guests share so much. And I think we're going to learn a lot from Natalie, and I'm looking forward to it. So welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Absolutely. So let me just ask you, are you really in a tropical paradise right now, or
In my mind, yes, I'm
okay.
sitting on this beach. Absolutely.
I would love to jump into that nice blue water right behind you, but
I'm in Florida. I don't know if that qualifies as a tropical paradise, but it's the closest thing.
okay. And you're safe from all the hurricanes so far.
So far, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll keep hoping. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about you. I know that you had some struggles a little over 30 plus years ago. Want to talk about them and how you got through them?
Okay. Well, yeah, my struggles actually lasted about 30 years, but my name's Natalie, and I have been since 32 years ago practicing veterinarian, and 24 of those years were in the ER and critical care. So that was lots of long shifts, sometimes 90-hour work weeks, lots of sleep deprivation, lots of really bad eating habits and high stress, and just everything that you would imagine would go with that. And what a lot of people probably don't realize is veterinarians as a whole, a lot of veterinarians suffer from suicide ideation, depression, anxiety, a lot of really intense negative emotions. There's a lot of stress and burnout in this industry, and I was definitely headed down that road. So after 30 plus years, I really found myself kind of in a place where I didn't feel any kind of optimism for my future. The idea of doing what I had been doing for another 20 years just really just made me want to just move to a desert island and never talk to another human again. And the thing is, I didn't really see a way out for me. I didn't know what other options I had because I had been so intensely focused on veterinary medicine for my entire life, ever since I was like 7 or 8 years old. Never really considered another option. So I was like, well, what do I want to be when I grow up? This is my midlife crisis.
Right.
And because of all of the stress and just everything that I had to deal with, I developed a habit of making myself feel better with food, which a lot of people do. And so my weight just crept up and crept up and crept up. And I, just kind of found myself one day like, I got to do something. I can feel my body breaking down. This is going to shorten my lifespan. It's interfering with my enjoyment of my life, and my self-esteem was in the toilet. So, like most people, tried this diet, tried that diet. It would work for a while. I could white knuckle my way through it, and then I would fall off the wagon. The weight would come back along with, more than what I had before. And it was just this really discouraging cycle. And then just in 2019, just by a random accident, I happened to stumble across this weight loss group that was run by a life coach. And I was like, well, I got nothing to lose. Let me try this. And it blew my mind. I had no idea to the extent that I was sabotaging myself with my emotional eating. I had no better tools to manage my emotions. And once I started working on different ways to kind of, straighten out my mindset and just have a different emotional experience, when you have better ways to manage your emotions, you don't have to soothe yourself with food as much. So over the course of about a year and a half, I lost 75, almost 80 pounds. And it blew me away, like how easy it was. It wasn't a struggle. I actually felt good doing it. And my self-esteem was starting to come up. And so all my relationships got better. My general experience of my life on a daily basis got better. It wasn't so negative anymore. my vision for the future just started looking optimistic for the first time in about 30 years. And I realized, I'm getting so many benefits from this, way like completely independent of any kind of weight loss. The weight loss was almost like an accident, because as I started to feel better about myself, I didn't need to eat anymore to feel better in the moment. And when that light bulb went off in my head, I was like, oh my gosh, this is probably the greatest gift I have ever given myself. And then from that, I took the next step to, what am I going to do with the rest of my life if I don't want to stay in practice? And that is like, I can't imagine a better gift to pay forward to the human race than to bring this kind of change to the people who need it and the people who want it. And so when COVID hit and all of my, the things that I like to do with my time kind of dried up and went away, I'm like, well, here's my opportunity. So I found a coach training program. And from there, I discovered positive intelligence, which has been hands down the best thing that I have ever experienced for myself. And that's why I'm here now. So
I
currently
love
working.
I love what you just said, because I took the positive intelligence training last summer, and we have continued into a weekly group reinforcing. And as I shared with somebody earlier, when I started the course, I was fighting it.
Yep.
I don't want to do that. I'm not going to set my timer. I'm not going to listen to that. And I went along with my gut. I listened and I did, but I did what felt comfortable for me.
Yep.
And it's amazing that so many of us think, whether it's a weight loss program or a program to get our minds to think more positively, we don't have to do it exactly, but listen to what it's about. And obviously that's what you did with your dieting. It wasn't so much dieting, it was creating a new lifestyle. Okay. And when we look at things like that, what a difference it makes for us.
Definitely.
And we're doing it.
Definitely. Your self-worth really determines everything about your experience in life. And for me, the key to overcoming that emotional eating was to just completely change how I felt about myself. All the self-judgment that I was heaping onto myself. I had this negative voice 24/7 in my head telling me how unworthy I was and how I was just doomed to be miserable and unhappy for the rest of my life. And the more I've learned through the coach training program, through the coaching I received from the weight loss group, and then from positive intelligence, now I understand why my brain is working this way. And I can see it coming before it derails me. And it has been a night and day experience. Just the self-worth issue alone has been completely life-changing. And so that's been my big light bulb. And that I think is the key to so much of the emotional pain that other people experience and they don't know how to handle it. They don't have the tools yet. So
and there are some of us who believe that, well, this is the way I'm supposed to feel. And we don't know that there's a way to get out of it. My mother was on yo-yo diets her whole life. And I watched it, and it always upset me because she could lose 50, 60 pounds, in a couple months, have the body that she said she wanted, and then balloon back up.
Right.
And because of that, I refused to ever go on an actual diet. Okay, I need to cut something out. What are the bad things that I'm eating? Okay, what can I substitute for those bad things when I want that treat? And so I remember sitting down with her one day and saying, you put so much energy into losing the weight. What makes you put it back on? And she always said she didn't know. But right before she passed away, we had this conversation again. And she had put on quite a bit of weight. And the doctors kept telling her to lose weight. My mother was in her 90s. And it was like, come on, you're going to take that piece of cake away from her at this point. Why? And we talked about it. And she said, I guess I've been depressed most of my life. And it's the first time I ever heard those words from her. And, I asked specifically, what was your real relationship with dad? And she said, oh no, he didn't depress me. But there were things that happened as she was growing up. She never dealt with them. And they were still sitting
Right.
in the pit of her stomach.
Exactly. If you don't deal with your emotional pain, if that is what is driving you to soothe yourself with food, that is the number one reason why diets fail. Because you can give yourself lists of good foods and bad foods and calorie allotments, or no carbs, or whatever it is, but that does not address the underlying emotional drivers. And that was the big light bulb for me when I finally realized that this is the key for me, because there's a logical part of our brain, and then there's an emotional part of our brain, and the emotions are going to win out over logic every time. So if you're trying to follow the rules, you're basically white knuckling your way through something that you see as a miserable experience. And there's no way that anybody's going to stick to something that they feel is an unpleasant experience for more than a few weeks or a few months, depending on how much willpower you have. But willpower doesn't last forever. And that is why it is so important to do the emotional work at the same time as you're doing the weight loss work, because that's what's going to make it stick.
So you left veterinary medicine. You had been there a long time. Oh, you didn't? Are you
No,
still?
I'm still
Oh,
practicing. I'm kind of starting to phase it out though. No more 90-hour work weeks for me.
okay.
So I'm gradually stepping down my schedule as I'm starting to prioritize the stress and burnout coaching. And this is a gift that I would love to bring to vet med, because there's so many veterinarians that need it so desperately, but have absolutely no idea how to start. And it's not just limited to veterinarians. I mean, who isn't stressed, and who hasn't experienced burnout? And I mean, I'm sure there are some people
Right.
who live stress-free lives. I envy those people, but for the rest of us, I think this is really the most important work that I can be doing right now. And it just kind of hit me that the greatest gift I can bring to my profession is not just showing up to work tomorrow and working, seeing appointments from 9 to 5. It's the coaching. It's helping my colleagues.
And that's important, and it's up to your colleagues whether to take to listen to this and maybe make their life better,
Mm-hmm.
or to say, hey, I can't listen to this because this is what I chose to do and this is my lot in life.
Right.
Um,
But
I,
your
I
experience does not have to be one of misery and frustration. It's it's hard for people to understand when they're in it, because we really can't see our way to the other side of it. And there's a lot of layers that kind of go into that, and we just kind of fall into these negative patterns. And like I said, there's a 30-year period of my life that I just refer to as the black hole, because all I did was eat, sleep, work. And I did not think I had time to do anything else or to change anything. I didn't know how to change anything. And it wasn't until I started doing this work that I realized it is completely within my power to create an entirely new and more positive experience. And I'm still working on it every day. It's going
oh,
to be a long thing.
and that's part of what we have to do. Then, it's like people who are married and they say, I work at my marriage every day. Well, of course you do. Whatever that relationship is with yourself, with another person, if you don't keep working at it, it's going to fall apart.
Mhm.
Um, and I know when I left corporate America, I was having a very hard time with it because I loved what I did, but the culture around it was killing me. And because of the culture, I didn't work my 9 to 5. I was getting at work as early as 7:30 in the morning and leaving at 7 o'clock at night and coming home exhausted. My husband was tired too. He doesn't know how to cook. He'll never learn how to cook. And that's just his choice. And
Mhm.
it'd be like, oh, I now have to make dinner. And I was making dinner and I was cleaning up after dinner. I wasn't asking for help
Yeah.
because it wasn't within me at that time to be able to ask. And when I started to collapse, it was my youngest son who noticed and he said, Mom, why are you so depressed? And I got angry. I was like, I'm not depressed. I love what I'm doing. He says, you may love what you're doing, but something is really depressing you.
Not happy.
And when I thought about it, it was like, why am I working 12-hour days when nobody else in the office is working a 12-hour day? Why am I coming home and making dinner because my husband has chosen not to cook? I could have come home and made a piece of toast and I would have been happy. And so once I started to realize that, and I started communicating that with my family, they would say, yeah, you don't have to cook dinner. Or you could ask us to meet you someplace on your way home and we could go out to eat. And it was like a world opened up because I really started communicating.
Right.
It sounds like that's what you started doing, at least with your son.
Yeah, asking for help was something I just didn't do because I had to be the superhero that swooped in and saved everybody else and did the work of 10 people and never needed to rest. And that really just drove me even further into the burnout hole. And I had to really do a lot of work around, why do I feel so guilty recognizing that I have limitations? Why do I feel so guilty asking for what I need? Because I've been trained my whole life to put everybody else's needs in front of my own, which comes right back to that whole lack of self-worth. I am not worth as much as other people. Therefore, I can only have what I want after everybody else has what they want.
Right.
And that was going to drive me into an early grave. And that
So
was a hard thing for me to realize.
So what drew you into veterinary medicine? You said at 7 years old, you sort of knew this is what you wanted to do. What was it about the animals that was giving you comfort?
Well, I was an only child and my family moved every 2 years. So I never really had any friends. And my pets were really the most stable relationships that I had in my life. And when I was about 7 years old, my cat, who was the whole center of my world, I knew that there was something wrong with him. And I begged my parents and begged and begged and begged, please take him to the vet. There's something wrong. And they kept blowing me off and blowing me off. He's fine. He's fine. He's fine. Well, 3 days later, when he was shaking and unable to get up, they finally took him to the vet, found out that he had had a bladder obstruction, which is a common thing with boy cats. And it was too late. He died under anesthesia. It was too late to save him. And that just destroyed my life because he was my best friend. He was my soulmate. And that was kind of when it clinched for me that I just wanted to spend my life saving animals so that no one else would have to ever go through that kind of pain, which, of course, is impossible for me to save anything. But that was really it for me. I'd always had a really strong bond with animals. And I just felt called to try to ease as much animal suffering as I possibly could without realizing that, there's a lot of human suffering that goes along with that. Both for the pet owners and for the people who are working in veterinary medicine. And so it's kind of shifted my perspective, after 32 years of sacrificing and giving and, working through weekends and holidays and never sleeping in my own bed at night. It just got to be like, when is it going to be time for me? Quality of life is not just for animals. There has to be a time in my life when I stop putting everybody else in front of myself. And I realize that I got to take care of me too, or I'm going to drop dead and I'm not going to be there for the people who need me.
So you mentioned in the beginning that statistically, suicide is something that is big in the veterinarian community. And for someone like myself, I never would have thought that. That seemed to be so loving to our animals that it seems like that's their calling and that's what they want to do. But is it stressful because you are treating an animal who can't really respond back to you, or is it more than that?
It is way more than that. I mean, we all come into veterinary medicine because we love animals and we want to help. And a lot of times that help is not appreciated. There's an expectation. Well, you must love animals because you're a vet. So why should I have to pay all this money for all the testing and the treatment that my pet needs? There's a lot of clients blaming us for what's wrong with their pet, or whether or not they can afford to provide the treatment. There's no work-life boundaries. There's, your people expect you to be available 24/7. You can't take a vacation. You can't have a weekend off. You can't have an evening to yourself with your family. I have literally been dragged out of the bathroom. I have been dragged out of my car as I was leaving work, because, hey, somebody else needs something. Can you just do this one more thing real quick? And it is always, there's always too much expected of you. There's never enough resources to actually do it. The only feedback that you typically get from people is when it's negative, when they're unhappy. There's really not, you would think, but there's really not a lot of appreciation for all the work and all the sacrifice that we do. And over years and decades of that constant demands, constant negative messaging, when all we really want to do is give and heal and be loving, it really gets to be too much to take. And a lot of us don't really see a way out because we're so far in debt. A lot of people probably don't realize that most veterinary students these days are graduating with $500,000 in debt that they have no hope of ever paying off because the salaries just don't support that. And you add on top of that 70, 80-hour work weeks, and just the constant dissatisfaction, like no matter what you do, it's never going to be good enough. And we get that from our bosses, and we get that from the clients. And it's just, there's a lot of layers to it, but that's kind of what leads some of us to feel like, I don't have a way out. I'm stuck here. I can't afford to get out. This is going to be my life for the rest of my life. I'm miserable. It's not worth it.
And that is sad, because when we think about individuals who are going through that, we typically think of somebody who is maybe doesn't have the full education they need to do something else, and they're working fast food, and they're at minimum wage or maybe a little bit higher. But I have heard this more often than not, that those individuals tend to be happier than those who have put in all the education, are there trying to do all the right things.
Yeah.
And
the happiest time in my life was when everything I owned could fit into half of a college dorm room, and I had $100 to my name.
Yeah.
No responsibility, could just go wherever I want, do whatever I want. Yeah, it was, in hindsight, it's amazing how the more successful we are, sometimes the less happy we get.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But now you are out there helping your colleagues, and you're not necessarily telling them they've got to quit what they're doing, but they've got to find a good life balance.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're not feeling good from the pit of their stomach, then there's something that needs to be changed.
Exactly. Yeah. Again, it all comes back to how we feel about ourselves and what we believe about ourselves. And especially because veterinarians and just, health workers in general, we all go into these fields because we are loving, giving people. But there is no end to what other people want from you, what other people need from you. And if you have no boundaries and you keep giving until you drop, it's never going to be enough. And you have to prioritize your own needs at some point, or you are incapable of helping anyone else. So not feeling guilty about saying no when somebody says, oh, can you just do this one more thing before you leave, that is gonna like rope you into getting stuck at work for another hour.
Right.
And not feeling guilty about not answering your phone on weekends or evenings when you're trying to spend time with your family. Not feeling guilty about, I'm taking my vacation, whether it's convenient for you or the clients or not, because I got to take care of me. It all comes down to how much we value ourselves. And until that changes, nothing changes.
You are so correct. I thought I was doing well until I took the positive intelligence, and I saw so much more that I could do for me. And that's not to say to my listeners that I'm perfect at it, because there are days that the word no is not in my vocabulary. And then the next day I have to sit back and not blame myself or others, but realize, okay, what could I have said no to? How can I do that in the future? And what made me say yes rather than no? And sometimes it's because I was trying to fulfill my ego more than do the right thing. And that's the great thing with coaching, is that as a coach, you don't tell somebody what to think, but you pry and find out why are you thinking that, and how could it be different. I have two great coaches that I work with, and one is always saying to me, Karen, you're doing marvelous. And I'll say, yes, but I could be doing better. I'm not beating myself up, but I know I could do better. And she'll say, then explain that to me. And when I do, it's like, there's that catch. That's what I need to do. Why aren't I concentrating on it? And getting rid of the words should and could have been remarkable.
Definitely. Definitely. You know, for me, I think the most impactful work that I have done is I don't have children, but for people who do have children, would you treat your child the way that you're treating yourself? Would you say the things to your child that you say to yourself? Would you feed your child the way you're feeding yourself? So I keep a picture of myself from, I was like 4 or 5 years old. I keep it on my desk. And if I catch myself not wanting to, you know, if I want to put somebody else's needs in front of somebody, calls from the office and they need me to come and work a shift or something, would I do this to my child? If this picture of this little girl that's on my desk right now, if that little girl was in front of me and she was looking up at me, you know, ready to go and play, you know, you promised today was our day, and oh, sorry, you know, I have to go into work. That's crushing. You know, I don't think twice about giving up what I want to go and run off and give somebody else what they want. But would I do that to my child if she was looking up at me with those big eyes? And that's really kind of helped to reframe that and put it into a different perspective. I keep sending my little child to my room and telling her, go sit in your room, mommy can't play with you right now. And you know, we'll do it later, we'll do it later. Well, you know, here it is 32 years later. When is later going to happen? I'm running out of tomorrows to actually start giving myself the things that I've always wanted for my life. And just that whole idea of, would I do this to my child, has really helped me to kind of make some better decisions for myself.
Well, and you know, we grow up with, some people want to call it baggage, some of us just call it memories, but we remember some of the things that we were taught growing up. And my parents always said, you know, if you're a hard worker and a good worker, you know, you will be acknowledged for that. And so every job I ever had, you know, I just gave it my all. And I'm, you know, but I became the punching bag. And I realized that because I kept saying, I can do it. I'll learn to do it. Oh, so and so didn't show up today. Okay, I'll take the extra shift. And then when I started getting angry, I remember one of my managers pulled me to a side and said, how can you be angry, Karen? You have volunteered for the last 9 years. And I remember just standing there with the tears going down my face saying, why didn't you ever acknowledge it? It was because you volunteered before we had a chance to acknowledge you.
Because it's not their job to manage your life.
Right. Yep.
I tell myself, you know, there's not some invisible cosmic referee following me around saying, no, 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 don't ask Natalie for anything. It's her time to have some personal time. It's my job. You know, it's my boss's job to get as much work out of me as they possibly can. It's my job to say, no, enough is enough. This is where I have to draw the line. So you're right. If you say yes to something and you say yes with resentment, it should be a no.
Absolutely. Well, how can our listeners find you and learn a little bit more about you, or maybe connect with you for some coaching?
Yeah, absolutely. My website is nolimitscoachingnow.com. And I actually just revised it the other day. So there's a whole page on stress and burnout for individuals. And also I'm offering programs for organizations for, that, believe it or not, there are business owners out there who care about the well-being of their employees. And so I would love to be able to provide a way to take the suck out of going to work, to actually create a work environment and a work culture that you look forward to going to every day, where you feel safe, where you feel recognized and acknowledged, where you can express your creativity and your innovation without fear of backlash or criticism. So that's my website. I also have monthly workshops and a weekly newsletter that they can sign up for if they'd like to hear more. And yeah, thank you very much.
Well, and we will put all that in the show notes. So for those of you listening, it will be right there. You'll be able to click on the links and get through to Natalie. And again, I want to wish you the best of luck as you continue to transition. And to all of your clients, I think you're in really good hands. So
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
oh, absolutely. And again, I want to go find that blue water. I want to go swimming right
Yes.
now.
Yes, let's go together.
All right. Have a
Great.
great day. Bye-bye now.
Thank you so much.